to say, well, what comes next, and what are the basic tools that people need. Like if you need a way to be able to find each other, if you need a way to be able to find a location like San Francisco or Harvard University or something, well, you're probably going to have a lookup system that lets you type in Harvard University somewhere, and that's probably a lot like DNS, and this is something that we're thinking about as well. But at the end of the day, I think that the virtual world of the future, as it takes its next big leap, probably propelled by all this exciting hardware, is going to be an internetwork of virtual worlds, and we're going to need to make all that work. And again, things like OpenSim have started the work, and of course Second Life, have started the work to kind of get us all thinking about those issues. The code, the software probably needs to be open source. The protocols need to be inspectable, just like the web. Most of the stuff on the web that we trust today, things like SSL and DNS, are things that are either open source or open protocols. You can't do a really great human endeavor on the internet like that without having a pretty fair degree of open documentation, visibility into that stuff. As an engineer, I'm just a fundamental believer in that. I think that's almost best practice nowadays, so I probably don't even need to say it, but I think it goes without saying. I think it needs to be, obviously, if it's an internetwork, it's a lot of small servers loosely joined, as they say. There's no off switch for the virtual world. There's no central agency that allows you to turn it on and off. I think the Ready Player One idea of kind of one great company that controlled it all is a delightful dystopian fantasy, and it makes the fiction great. But I don't think it's likely that the virtual worlds of the future are that way. And I think the internet of websites today demonstrates that that's pretty much true. I mean, of course, we've all got our concerns about this or that big company, but the reality is that there are more companies today than ever before, and more participants in the dialogue about how things should work and how stuff should be controlled. So let's talk for a second about scale as a final thing now. I know that there are thousands and thousands and thousands of educators in Second Life. And moreover, I'm going to boldly assert that a great event like this would attract a good percentage of them. And yet, despite the fact that I think we're on a beautiful four-corner connect here of several sims, we're only able to interact together as audience and speaker with a few hundred people here. So that's great. That's better than anything that's been done in the past, and I'm super proud of it. But this what do you call this? This stadium I'm standing in right now has a capacity for several thousand people to listen to me, and with the right audio, which of course is easy online, we can make it so that we can engage in a real conversation with those people. We can have a real forum, but we can't get thousands of people together in one place in a virtual world right now. We can't make that work yet. So scale. We got to design for scale. What does that mean? Well, it means several different things, and all things we're working on at High Fidelity, and all things that, again, lots of folks here have worked on. But I guess what I would say is these scaling problems are soluble. But let me go on about that, because I think it points to another really interesting dynamic architecture about the future of virtual worlds and how we all have to help participate in creating them. And that is that a typical server machine today, if you're holding a class and you want to have a bunch of people come to that class, when you step up the bandwidths to several megabits per person, as we're doing at High Fidelity, and you need to do that to carry all this data, very high quality audio, facial animation, all this stuff, right? It means that the amount of data that has to be sent out to each individual is, megabits of data at a time. Now, for those who are more technical here, what that you all know what that means, which is it means that like one internet server, one fast desktop machine, one computer inside an Amazon complex or whatever, it can only service like 10 to 100 people. And that's part of the challenge of Second Life. Now, Second Life has about 40,000 servers, which again is just incredible. But each of those servers can only serve, dozens of people at a time. And as we need to move more data over these networks, the number in some cases for a while will actually go down. So if we wanted to have a get together for several thousand people, we need, for the time of that get together, to have dozens of machines or 100 or so or something machines available to us. If we want to have a rock concert for 100,000 people, which I very much believe we can do in the next couple of years, we actually are going to need thousands of machines. A really big event might require more machines than comprise the entire network of Second Life today. So how are we going to do this? The good news is we can do it. We've built an architecture for it at High Fidelity. I'm sure other people will do their own experiments. I'm sure improvements to Second Life will also, start to go in that direction. The good news is that there is a way to do it. It's kind of hard. Basically, as soon as people start showing up in this space, you got to start pulling up additional machines and kind of connecting those machines together in real time. But there are architectures that have done this before, like Skype or BitTorrent. You can allocate machines pretty quickly in Amazon, probably not quickly enough to, come together in a few minutes for an event, but you can get a lot of machines online pretty quickly. There's a question of who's paying for those machines, but there are ways of doing this. So technically, it's feasible to put 1,000 machines together. And for that matter, 1,000 machines serving a rock concert really aren't even all that expensive if you're only using them for a couple hours. So how do we do that? Well, the basic problem you run into, if you imagine a virtual world that has 1 billion people in it, is that there actually aren't enough servers out there to host them all. If everybody on the internet was simultaneously being delivered several megabits of data in real time and talking to each other, actually, there's probably not even enough servers out there. Now, Google has a lot of servers doing things like search, but if you start counting at places like Amazon and Rackspace, the number you get to is that the number of servers out there is probably somewhere around 500,000 to 1 million physical servers. By the way, it should make us all the more impressed with Second Life that we're actually using a significant percentage of those machines to run Second Life, which is pretty cool. But all in all, we've only got hundreds of thousands of machines available. So, in the words of when we started High Fidelity and we got into this, I'd say in the words of what was it, Richard Dreyfuss in that? Oh no, not Richard Dreyfuss, Roy Schneider in Jaws. We're going to need a bigger boat. So, what's the bigger boat look like? So I believe, and this is what we're working on at High Fidelity, I believe that the bigger boat is the idea that we can get access to everybody's machines and use them as servers. Many of you have heard of projects like SETI, where you can dedicate your computer to searching for, looking at the radio signals coming from those big dishes and looking for, people out there in space. You can also dedicate your machine to do things like protein folding. Think about something like SETI, and then think, could we write a piece of software that not only lets you run your own internet server, your own virtual world server, but also lets you share your machine with your friends or with a larger community? Imagine a system that uses an economy like the Second Life economy to do that, and allows us to basically sort of borrow machines from each other whenever we need them. We've done lots of work on this. We actually have it working. It's not ready for prime time yet, so you're not trying it yet. But I don't have anything for you to download right now. But we believe that this is a completely solvable problem, and that the next generation of virtual worlds can actually be built as a kind of a cloud of machines that are shared by and borrowed from all of us. So that's something that we're working on. That would allow us to do that kind of a rock concert. And it would allow you as educators to very efficiently, at a low cost, pull those machines together. Why most of our machines that we've got when we're not using something like Second Life, when we're at work or something, we've got these big powerful desktop machines that are connected over, typically cable modem connections at, 50 megabits down and 10 megabits up. Those are very powerful machines. If we could borrow those from you, if you could borrow those from each other, you would. And that would potentially give us access to a lot more machines than we've ever had access to. That's right. I saw somebody say FidoNet. Absolutely. I mean, we've been thinking about ways to share machines for a long time, and I think we're going to do it to create the next generation of virtual worlds. So I think that's a pretty amazing thought. I mean, I think that it's doable. I think it's what we're working on, and I think that the implication of being able to get access to a number of machines for the simulation and the streaming of the virtual world that is literally several orders of magnitude larger than even what we have in the entire physical plant on Earth, uh, it's uh, it's pretty amazing to imagine what that might be like. Um, the other thing, as a side note about this, that just on the technology side, probably more related to just the oh wow experience, like the Oculus of virtual reality, than the specific needs, say, of educators, is that we got to be able to sort of see more stuff in the world. And so that is to say, when you fly up in the air in Second Life, why can't we see the whole thing, right? For those of you who have seen those pictures that we used to do once in a while of what it all looks like if you kind of render it all, write a routine that offline basically renders everything on all the islands out into the distance, it's just a completely, heart-stopping thing to see how much we've all built together, and how big this space is. It's, we're the size of Los Angeles, I believe, at this point, roughly the size of the LA basin here, and that's just a staggering amount of stuff. Um, so we need a technology that lets us even better than Second Life. We need technology that lets us fly up in the air and look out, 10 miles into the distance and see things. And we believe there's a way to do that as well. And it's actually tied to the same problem of, needing to have 1,000 people show up at a concert. We think the same technology that kind of lets people show up at a concert will also let us, put an enormous number of prims, if you will, right on top of me, and then back away from those and not have to download them all and render them all as we often do today. So I think there's a lot of neat technology there. So, in summary, and then we'll have some questions, this hardware that we're about to see come onto the market, kind of led by the wonderful, poster child of the Oculus, is going to fundamentally open the doors to a higher, an easier way to sort of interface with the virtual environment. And that means people are going to flood in here because they're not going to have this learning curve, this incredible learning curve that we've all taken on and mastered. I think that the architecture needs to be very open, and I think that we need to contrive of a way to use orders of magnitude more servers than we've been able to use thus far to simulate virtual worlds. And I think that with those things put together, I think the future for educators will be just incredible, because I think you'll suddenly have the ability to bring a lot of people together in one space, and you'll have the ability as a teacher to teach by looking into the eyes of your students, and using all this other wonderful capability that we've got here by not having to be embodied physically in a space. You're going to be able to use that in a context and a setting where it's all real, where the people are really looking at you and they're really paying attention, and you really can, throw an eraser at somebody, I guess, if they're not listening to you. So thank you very much for having me, and I hope that's a good look at things. And why don't we shift now to a few questions? And again, I just thank you very much for letting me give this talk today.
Great. Thank you very much, Philip. If people want to put their questions into local chat, what we'll do is we'll read them out, and Philip will provide some answers.
Absolutely. Thanks for all that chat. I saw when everybody stop talking. Just scroll back. I saw when did we expect? If you guys can stop chat clapping, that's good. I can read. Here we go. Cool. Nymph Hathaway asks, when can we expect High Fidelity to open? I don't know. We've been working on it for about a year. We've got some things working. There is an alpha sign-up form on our site. I'd encourage you all to certainly do that. You're more than welcome to. There's a sign-up form at highfidelity.io where you can sign up for our alpha. We've already got a number of people on there, and we're starting to let in a very small number of people, but understand that what we've got with High Fidelity isn't working yet, not in the way, for example, that Second Life was at the moment that it launched. We still got some more work to be done, but we are starting to let people, for example, explore the experience of looking at each other face-to-face and talking, and coming to a meetup and hanging out with me, and kind of feeling how different it is to be in there with this very low latency and hardware controllers. Okay, so hopefully that's helpful. Nick asks, hang on a minute here. What do I got here?
Do you see controllers like Leap or Connect in this
Yeah,
wave of the
thank you.
future virtual worlds?
Why don't you guys do that? That's awesome. Read those out to me. Thank you very much,
Okay.
Dylan. The Leap and the Connect, yes, as I said, I think the Connect is a very powerful tool. It's what we use. We use the short range version, which is called the Carmine, the PrimeSense Carmine. It's basically the same thing as a Connect. We've actually 3D printed little clips that put it on the laptop. If you saw that video of me, you saw me. I had one clipped on my laptop. We use those today to capture your face animations. Whether we can use depth cameras to capture the hands well enough is still, the jury's still out on that. The Leap controller is a very cool idea, but it also has some big problems with extraneous light, and it has a small work envelope. So you have to put your hands up over your keyboard, and I think that's a difficult way to manipulate things. But again, there's so much great hardware coming out. Lots of problems are going to get solved by different startups. I mentioned the ones that I like the best, but we're definitely going to see a lot there. Cool.
Okay.
Next.
Cool. Philippe is asking, back in 2008, I asked you if you thought technical issues or social culture issues were the biggest barrier to broad adoption of the metaverse. Have your thoughts changed since then, and if so, how?
Fundamentally, I think it's technical issues. I think we were early. Maybe Philippe, you can remind me as to what I said at the time, but I certainly I'm respectful of the huge amount of work we've all done in crossing the cultural challenges that come with having a worldwide audience of people in the world together. But of course, come on, by and large, that has been just an inspiring, wonderful experience. And I think that there's many, many good technologies and strategies out there for continuing to advance the sort of managing the cultural aspects of the system. I believe it's technical. I believe that we, as I said, must get beyond the mouse and keyboard. If we can do that, as we begin to do that, we're going to see, very, very significant increases in the number of people using a virtual world.
Raymond asks, do you believe increases in computing power as individual servers increase in power, that this will help alleviate the server problems over time?
Well, I think we tend to make the system. We tend to also demand more fidelity, to reference my own company name now, with each advance in technology. So we tend to kind of increase the bandwidth we want from the system apace with the power of the computers. But as I said, I think I think the more wonderful, well, first of all, we can do things with computers today, given their speed. We're finding that out with high fidelity that you just can't believe. Like, we can do things with spatialized 3D audio that when you see it, you're just going to go, oh my gosh. I mean, voice in Second Life today is super cool. It's got a bunch of spatialization. Wait until you see what you can do with the power of machines today. So I think that the big challenge is actually just getting a lot of machines into the mix, and that means two things I said. One is an open system in which we can all run our own servers, and two is the system in which we can actually share servers with each other.
Okay. Actually, I've got a follow-on question to that, if you don't mind. How do you see the privacy issues relating to that? I mean, as we look at people wanting to share information, obviously having access to individual computers, how do you see that being impacted by
Yeah, I mean, the privacy issues around this are obviously going to be rich. I think that when you talk about people deploying their own virtual world servers, I think that, and I mentioned this in my blog post about identity, I think that we are going to make decisions of trust as avatars coming into a server about how much we want to tell that server about us. And I think the only architectures that are going to work are going to be architectures in which there's a negotiation. So what I mean by that is I'm going to log into your server, but I don't even know you at all. And it's going to say, hey, I need to know your true name, before I let you into the server. And I'm going to say, no, I won't give you that. I won't come in here if you're asking for that. I think there'll be a gradated scale of interactions that are between server operators and their visitors, basically, that are coming in. And I think that they'll negotiate a level of trust in the same way that we do with a website. It won't be an all or nothing affair where you've got, one big world, and then the big world is saying, okay, here's what you got to tell me about yourself to get in, and then I'm going to tell everybody else that information about you, which is kind of the de facto how we do virtual worlds and games today. I think it'll be a negotiation, and I think anonymity will always be the starting point, and then you'll have this appropriate you'll have this wonderful negotiation that'll happen where the person who runs the land you're standing on will say, hey, I need to know this about you, and you'll say, well, I'll tell you this but not that. So I think it's going to work.
Okay. With Carmsy Melody is asking, will these amazing devices require users, such as students, educational institutions, and others, to invest in new, expensive, or upgraded hardware? Cost is an issue for many.
That's a good question. I mean, I think with Second Life in education, we saw that ultimately educators were able to find. I think that technology is becoming cheaper and more accessible, and educators are having access to more and more powerful technology. So I can see that gap closing. I do see what you mean. I mean, I think that, well, certainly with high fidelity, for example, we're focusing on things like WebGL rendering, to be able to provide, basic, things like portals into the virtual world, through not just, on a low-end machine, but actually just through HTML5, if you're talking about WebGL. So I think that the general capability of computing devices in the network means that we'll probably have a more open sense of access across the board. Now, looking into people's eyes, though, and listening to them talk, that does require new hardware. It doesn't necessarily require it for everybody. For example, your educator, your speaker can be empowered to be watched. You could be watching your educator's face and eyes move, and you don't have to have your face and eyes move. So I think there are ways to negotiate through this. But I would say that as with Second Life itself, all of this stuff is driven by advances in technology, and that's going to be true here as well. We're going to have pretty fast machines moving, megabits per second of data around.
I've got a question here from Draxer who wants to know, will high fidelity make Second Life obsolete?
Well, I think that high fidelity, and as you may know, Linden Lab and Second Life are actually one of the investors in high fidelity.
Mm-hmm.
High fidelity is a pretty aggressive set of new ideas, as I've just explained. And so I feel like there's a what we're doing at high fidelity is sort of farther out and more aggressive and so experimental and different that a lot of the research ideas that'll come out of it will be things that you'll see getting into Second Life over time. I mean, there's a Second Life version, as I understand, for the Oculus now. I haven't tried it yet, but I'm sure it's an absolute delight to use. And I think we're going to see other things like that. Maybe you'll see some of the innovations we've built in high fidelity around things like facial animation, being things that you can try in Second Life. I think that's going to work. I think broadly the team at Second Life, and certainly this is my perspective, understand that to do really, really crazy new things that are farther out, like what we're doing with high fidelity, you really want to do that as a new company with a small team, and so that's what we're trying to do. But I have very open communications. I was just with Ebe, who's a wonderful guy, who's the new CEO at Linden, I believe, if I understand. He's speaking at this conference as well. Yeah, I've got a great relationship with him. I was just over there the other day telling him about what we're doing, sharing notes about, thoughts about Second Life. So definitely open channels there, and I think that we can all help each other. And I think the opportunity long term is big enough that even if we are, two different companies that are competing in some way, who cares if the overall market opportunity is growing by, a function of, 10 every year as this technology starts to hit. Oh, somebody just said Ebe's here. Cool. I don't see Ebe. Hello, Ebe, wherever you are. He's out there somewhere. I'm having trouble reading all these name tags. See, we can't. Too many.
Well, there's only 200 of them here, so it's
exactly. Now I'm scanning the audience like I
I'm
see if I could put my hand up. I'd be putting it up over my eyes right now so I could shield them from the sun as I looked around. Anyhow.
There we go. Alaska's asking, the person, not the state, is asking, how is the learning curve going to be for new users to high fidelity?
Well, as I said, I hope the fundamental thing is that, hey there, he just said I think the fundamental thing is that these higher degree of freedom devices is going to drop the learning curve a lot. I do think there's still going to be a learning curve, though. I mean, again, Second Life, many other companies, everybody's done a lot of great work on this stuff, and some of it's still kind of hard. I mean, there's a lot of aspects of, your inventory, for example, that are just, they're tough. I mean, some building building a beautiful house in the real world isn't an easy thing either. I mean, I think there's some stuff that's irreducible. You can't expect that the richness of experience that you get from Second Life is something that ultimately can be reduced to sort of taking a pill or just snapping your fingers and learning it immediately. I think there'll still be a learning curve, but like I said at the beginning, and let me underscore that, I believe that the new hardware we've got coming out will make the learning curve profoundly different for people to get to a level of basic, I can do this, and hey, this is kind of fun to do in a way that is very different than doing it with a mouse and keyboard.
Do you think building better ways of handling identity in virtual worlds could overcome, and I apologize because I did skip through a portion of the question above here, but what they're essentially asking is, this whole idea of real life, virtual versus real life identities, would this be an uphill battle on a purely cultural level in order to gain acceptance of this idea of, opt-in identities?
Well, in a word, no. I mean, we travel to amazing faraway places as humans all the time, and we don't have names. I mean, you know what I mean. The identity problems get solved. I don't see why it would be any different here. I don't see a reason why the technical nature of a virtual world makes the cultural conflict of different strategies around identity unsolvable any more than it would be unsolvable for people from Asia or North America to travel to Europe. So we see that happening. I think we'll see the same thing happening here. Let's just take like one more. I don't want to. I know we gotta.
Well, then
we gotta keep this conference going.
we have time, so we're good. But if we've got one more, then I've got one here because I think this one is actually fairly important, and this is coming from Celine Highwater. Will there be an emphasis on making high fidelity accessible to those with disabilities, such as people who are blind or have other, physical limitations?
I mean, I think that's one of the things that's made Second Life so powerful and compelling and impactful is the degree to which it's been accessible, both at a fundamental level, because Second Life fundamentally is an ability to do things in a world that you don't necessarily have the ability to do in real life, or heck, for that matter, that all of us don't have the ability to do, like flying, for example. So I think Second Life, by its very nature, is accessible. Now, of course, there are lots of pieces, there are lots of specific features that make it more accommodating for people with different disabilities. I can answer for. I mean, Second Life, I think, just had a fantastic track record on that. I mean, it's been a concern and such an important part of the population for a long time, and always will be. I think that speaking for high fidelity, which I can speak for, part of our strategy with high fidelity is to build a lot of the systems in an open source fashion. And in a pluggable fashion. And my suspicion is that the way we're going to do that from the outset will enable us to get lots more people helping us with things like some of the sophisticated feature level things you can do to provide better accessibility. So I bet that we'll be able to do that really well. And I would say that, yes, absolutely, the people that make use of those accessibility features will very much be incredibly impactful in high fidelity, just as they have been here. So, but I think the fact that we're doing it in this open fashion, where we're going to be able to engage lots of people in its development, which by the way, has many similarities to the Second Life viewer being open source. I think we should also in high fidelity be able to get lots of people helping us and moving quite quickly on that. We're actually doing a little bit of that today. We've actually already got people helping us. Chipping in with pull requests on GitHub and doing things in what we call the work list, which is our kind of contract work website that we built just for more rapidly evolving high fidelity.
Okay, if you have time for just one more question, I think I'll throw this in if we could, and I'll leave
Great.
this as the last one, I promise.
Let's do one more.
Just because I like the question, and I'm glad somebody asked it. How can we encourage enthusiasm in virtual education?
Gosh, encourage enthusiasm. I don't know. I mean, I think that, don't you have it? I mean, the very fact that we can use this amazing venue and medium to teach. I mean, that I don't know, that's just incredibly motivating to me. I'm not, like I say, I think that once we can see each other's faces moving, and once we can sort of be in contact with each other in the way that these new pieces of hardware will enable, we're going to greatly amplify the impact and the immediacy and the appeal of the virtual education experience. I mean, I think it's just going to amplify what's already working really well. So I don't know. I let you, absolutely tell me what I can do. But from my perspective, I guess what I can do as an evangelist for all this and continue to do, and it's why I'm here today and delighted you guys brought me here, is just be a tireless evangelist for how many amazing things around education you can do in the virtual world. So I'm going to keep doing that.
Excellent. Well,
Great.
Philip, I'd like to thank you very much for coming out. I mean, this was a wonderful surprise when we asked and you said yes. I know everybody here has been just dying to hear you speak. I mean, it's always wonderful when people get a chance to talk to the creator of Second Life. And again, I'd like to thank you very much for being at the conference.
Thanks again very much for having me. Thanks everybody for having me. I'm humbled I'm humbled to have so many people doing so much good work in something that I got to help build. Thank you very much for having me, and talk to you all soon. And I look forward to a successful conference. Take care, everybody.
Excellent. Okay, thank you very much.
All right, you guys.